So Thrive EBR, it's the campaign is on. The boots are on the ground, trying to get the message out to the people. Executive Director from the Mayor's Office, Mason Batts, is with us. How are you, Mason?
Doing well, Brian. How are you?
Doing very well as well. I want to start off with this. Do you remember the TV show Friends?
I do.
Okay. There was a scene in Friends, and JP's got it queued up here. There's a scene in Friends where Phoebe is trying to teach Joey French. And I'm of the belief that every time you try to tell the tax base, every time you try to tell the electorate that something is on the ballot is not a new tax, it sounds to them exactly like this.
Your first line is, my name is Claude. So just repeat after me. Je m'appelle Claude.
Je découpe plow.
Like, no matter how hard you say it, no matter how hard you try, you're going to get lost in translation.
That's right.
Is that the case so far? Because it is an education process.
I think partly it is the case, but I think we've had some good results with some certain people. I think once we can kind of show in like a bar graph that in 1988 the library was approved at 11.1 mils, and 1999 it was approved at 11.1 mils, in 2015 11. So on and so forth, and that's the same thing with all three of the agencies that are on board here. Mm-hmm. So yes, I do think it is a bit of an education problem, and there's a lot of public mistrust in government in general. And so you come out, oh, it's not a tax. Yeah, right. Yeah,
right.
Tell us something else. But ultimately, you can't go on the ballot and claim it's a renewal if it's not actually a renewal.
Right.
So we are renewing millages that have been previously approved by voters, and so hopefully we can get that message out a little bit more and more every day.
So with the millages that are already there, it gets a little bit hazier because the money's not going exactly where it was going before, or at least not all of it.
That's right.
This gives our government the freedom to use current dollars in other places. That allows us to maximize our dollars. Is that getting lost in translation?
I think partly. I think over the next couple of months we're going to have to do a better job of kind of getting that message out there. But while I'm here, let's just kind of walk through exactly what we're doing.
Yeah.
So what we're doing is we're taking excess money that these other agencies willingly are giving up
mm-hmm.
in order that we can balance the budget in the general fund. Now, what is the general fund? Now, the budget number gets thrown around that East Baton Rouge Parish has a budget over $1 billion. That's
mm-hmm.
very true. The general fund is all we can touch, and that's only about $330 million.
Right.
So what we'll be looking at next year, let's say if Thrive does not pass, what we'll be looking at next year is having to cut some essential services, which, some people say, well, we'll cut them. Well, does it really make sense to cut those services when other agencies are sitting there flush with cash, and they're willing to give it up in order to balance the budget? Right. And that way we can keep picking up trash on time
mm-hmm.
and continue to mow the grass, as we are now. We need to really increase that. But if we want to just stay where we are, we have to do this.
The cuts to the budget, a part of that is there's only so much there's discretionarily, there's only so much y'all have access to, so there's only so much y'all could do on the back end from the savings end too.
That's right, and we are cutting the budget. Just last Metro Council meeting, we asked the Metro Council to approve us to renegotiate some of our bond debt for the sewer system, and we refinanced that debt, and that'll save us about $5 million, which was unanimously approved by the Metro Council.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing that we asked for the Metro Council to do that they approved was some changes to our insurance benefits, and that'll save us about $16 million, and that'll be on the next council agenda,
mm-hmm.
not this week, but in 2 weeks, for them to approve that change as well. So we are actively making cuts to government. So the way we're going to balance the budget in 2026 is by making cuts and getting additional revenue from paying off debt. That's the way we're going to get there.
We got Mason Batts in with us from the Mayor's Office, talk about the Thrive EBR program. Want to talk about just where the money goes once it's in. Like, how do we know, like, pot for pot, cut for cup, where the money's headed?
Yeah, so $52.4 million in cash will be used to pay off the debt in the general fund. That's some high-interest debt that once we pay that off, will generate about $9.6 million annually,
mm-hmm.
and we'll be able to use that to balance the budget. The second part of that is reoccurring dollars, about $4.5 million, in which we'll use for the Stormwater Master Plan.
Mm-hmm.
It's currently been funded at a tune of about $3.5 million a year, but that's been with federal American Rescue Plan Act dollars.
Right.
Those will expire after 2026. So Thrive doesn't pass us, and after 2026, we will not have any additional dollars to put into Stormwater Master Plan, along with everything else. So now we're going to fund it at a higher rate, and those are projects that are happening all across the parish, from Central, Baker, Zachary, St. George, everywhere. Flood master plan, and ultimately, if we can get these projects done, it'll lower the cost of insurance because we'll have reduced the flood risk for the entire parish.
Okay, and so if you are St. George, if you are Central, if you're Zachary, if you're Baker, there are benefits individually throughout.
Absolutely. One of the key things, which I just mentioned, is the drainage. A lot of these projects are in those areas. But outside of the drainage is the debt we're paying off is not debt that is owned by the city of Baton Rouge. It's debt owned by the entire parish. It had things to do with the entire parish over many, many, many years. So if we're able to pay off that debt, we're able to do services in those areas. One thing you'll see on the ballot is these dollars have to be spent on parish-wide initiatives. That was an agreement we made with all the mayors. They like that. The Metro Council members in those areas like that verbiage of parish-wide initiatives, which means we can't spend the Thrive dollars on, let's say, just BRPD or things like that. We've got to spend it on everything else.
I'm glad you opened that door because that's where I want to go, because that's exactly what I get hit with from people in St. George, from people in Central. And, well, I don't have a whole lot. I got a few friends in Zachary, but I'm not up that way very much, or Baker for that matter. But one of the biggest questions I get is, so what you're telling me is I'm using my tax dollars outside of the city limits to pay for things inside the city limits. That's not the correct translation.
No, it's not. And what a lot of people have to remember is the parish still does services everywhere else.
Right.
We still do all of the sewer everywhere. We still do trash collections. In St. George, we still do all the road maintenance, all the street light maintenance. In Central, there's several streets in which we do roads and things like that. Now, the mayor in Central will tell you he does help us out on some of those things, and we're thankful that he does. But we still are doing those services in those areas, and and thank God that we've been able to have a good working relationship with the mayor and the city council out in the new city of St. George. It's been a very good working relationship with them. And so, no, we're not going to take parish-wide tax dollars and spend them on citywide priorities, because legally we cannot do that, because, like I said, in the ballot language, it has to be spent on parish-wide priorities.
We got Mason Batts in with us for a couple more minutes. Actually, I'm looking at my rundown. If we're not done by 7:50, can I keep you till late?
Keep me,
okay.
Yeah.
Those entities who volunteered, who stepped up and said, take part of my money and put it back in the pool here. The library, the Council on Aging, mosquito abatement. Those were the big three that we've heard about. How does this affect them on the back end? How do we make sure that they don't get hurt when they're the ones who are offering help?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question, and it's good to know. I think a lot of people may still be confused, but we're all partners in this. They did come to us and they said, look, this is what we can give up. We can stay strong. We can keep doing what we need to do. We can maintain our existing level of services, but we can give up this money to help the parish, because ultimately, if we have to cut back in the general fund, that's really going to hurt those agencies severely. They still use our HR. They still use our purchasing department. All of these things, they still use DPW. All these things can affect those outside agencies. So if we don't, quote, thrive, then they're going to suffer. So all of these agencies have going to have plenty of funding to continue operating at the existing levels of services that the citizens of East Baton Rouge Parish have come to expect.
We got Mason Batts in with us for we're going to make this till the top of the hour, because there's a lot of ground that I want to cover. How do we make sure those three that have stepped up, there's a reason that those three stepped up and we didn't see anybody else in the pool yet. Why is it those three and not other entities that you would find in the budget that could look at their own budgets and say, we can scrub here, we can scrub there?
Well, those three entities, it's important to note that those three entities are directly under our control, which means we control the appointments to those boards. Now, there's like Breck and Katz. Those are two commissions that have been created by the state. So that's not in our jurisdiction. Those are technically state offices.
Right.
So that's not in our jurisdiction to go and be able to make those kind of deals with them. Now, there's there's a bit of a legal theory that maybe we could, if they agreed to it or something, but that's why those three agencies, those are the outside agencies in our government that make up that $1 billion budget that we don't have any direct control over, but we are the authority over those agencies, with being the Metro Council and the mayor's office.
It's just an important clarification, because it's not like Breck doesn't want to help.
Right.
It's not like Katz doesn't want to help. It's just the way they're set up, the way we are. And Mason, I got to tell you, and this isn't you, this isn't on the mayor, the way we have built this out, this city parish, this consolidated form of government. I mean, I feel like once y'all are done with this, you're going to move on to the next problem, but there's going to be so much uncoupling that needs to be done in the future. That's all for the future. That's all for the future. But man, y'all are really starting to show like problems of the past by solving them. But it's exposing so much of what was there before Mayor Edwards was elected.
Yes, it's when you're in good times, the problems are kind of hidden, and you let certain things balloon out of control because, well, our pocketbook's fine, so who cares what theirs looks like?
Right.
But when it gets tight, then you have to kind of start looking around and say, there's $140 million in cash laying over there.
Yeah.
You know, we may need to pay off some of our debt with that money.
Right. Well, and it's another thing when we're just the parish. You had the city and the parish. And now the parish has 5 cities. It's a completely different beast, and we haven't changed our game to keep up with it. Y'all are attempting to do that now. Before we get to our break, I got to ask you, with these 3 entities, do all 3 parts have to pass for this to work?
They don't all have to pass. They're all independent of each other. So if one fails, they don't all 3 fail.
Right.
So voters can choose to vote on them independently. But I'll say this: it works best if all 3 pass.
Right.
I think this will show a good deal of unity for the parish if we can get all 3 of these across the board, and it will put us in our best foot forward monetarily.
Yeah.
And I think that's the best way to go forward.
Let's pause right there. We'll check your money now. We'll check traffic. Mason Batt's going to stick with us for a couple more minutes here on Talk 107.3. Talk 107.3 FM, WBRP, mornings with Brian Haldane, rolling right along. We got about 4.5 minutes left with Mason Batts from the mayor's office. Okay, I really want to cover 2 topics here because we're gonna run out of time. Look, y'all gonna be on regularly throughout because as this is an educational process, there will be a lot of ground to cover. Let's start with this. The feedback from the surrounding mayors has been what?
It's been positive.
Okay.
We've worked together on a lot of aspects of this plan, as I referenced earlier.
Mm-hmm.
The parish-wide priorities that is in the ballot language, that was in partnership with those mayors to ensure that these dollars were going to be spent in their areas and not just in the city limits of Baton Rouge, but in the entire parish. So it's been pretty good.
This is one that's inseparable. Even if we were to completely deconsolidate our government tomorrow, everything flows downstream.
That's right. And you still have a parish. I mean,
right.
You have to, Ascension Parish, let's take Ascension, our neighbors to the south. They do not have a consolidated form of government, but yet they still have parish services. There's a city of Gonzales, but the parish president of Ascension Parish still does operations.
Mm-hmm.
So even though we're consolidated and those cities are now municipalities, there's still a parish government that has to be able to run and function here.
Well, where I was going with that was mostly from stormwater drainage perspective. That which has to be cleared and snagged up in Baker can affect what happens down in St. George.
Absolutely. The majority of the projects are in the southern end of the parish simply because, as you said,
right,
it all flows south.
Everything that's just the nature of water. It will always flow north to south. Okay, I'm going to ask the doomsday question before we get out of here. What happens if this fails?
I don't like necessarily answering that question because
I'm sure you don't.
It seems, kind of like fear mongering. I don't want to even think about that if it does. But if it does fail, there's 2 parts to this. It's what happens to the parish government and then what happens to these individual agencies. So from the parish government perspective, we're going to have to make some pretty deep cuts. And that's in addition to the cutting. And I'm not just talking about cutting waste. I'm talking about cutting services. Mm-hmm. Because we're cutting waste now. Thrive alone does not balance the budget. It's Thrive along with the fluid of cuts that we've made. I just referenced $21 million worth of cuts we've made just very recently.
Right.
So we're actively cutting waste, and we're going to continue to do that. But Thrive, along with those cuts, is what balances the budget. So if we don't, we're going to have to cut services. Grass won't be able to be cut as often. Maybe we have to turn street light maintenance over to DOTD, and the synchronized lights are going to be very unsynchronized if that happens because they don't have the technology or the manpower to keep them up. So those are the types of things that will have to happen. Now, from those agencies' perspective, let's take the library. The library won't have any new revenue in 2026, and they'll have to go back to the voters again and try to get this passed.
I'm sorry, that was where I was really going with this, was these individual entities that we've already voted for in the past. They will be left stranded first and foremost.
Yes.
That I think is probably the biggest point of contention. If the renewal fails, if the library's renewal fails, the library loses not just what they're offering up back to the city, but all of it.
That's right.
Same thing with Council on Aging, same thing with mosquito abatement.
That's right. So it's really we have one shot to get it right. And if we fail, we've really failed pretty big because this is our one chance to take that excess revenue and pay off our long-standing debt to put us on our best financial foot. But if it fails, we will not have that opportunity, and that money will go bye-bye along with the vote. So this is a really good chance for us to use some of the excess cash that these agencies have built up in order to pay down debt and balance our budget.
He is Mason Batts, Executive Director from the Mayor's Office. I appreciate you sticking around. Not the end of the conversation, but the end of the segment. I appreciate the time.
Thanks, Brian.